They say you can survive almost anything in Hollywood except being laughed at. For years, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry built a carefully crafted narrative of being the ultimate modern victims, royal exiles, fighting a cold, distant institution while searching for a private life in the backyards of multi-million-dollar mansions. But in the last few years, the shield of sympathy hasn't just cracked, it has completely shattered. The world didn't just stop believing the story. They started writing their own versions of it. And those versions aren't fairy tales, they're high-level comedy roasts. What started as whispers in British tabloids has transformed into a full-blown cultural reckoning led by the very people the Sussex hoped would be their new peers. When the biggest comedians in the world, the heavy hitters like Chris Rock and Jimmy Kimmel, decided to stop treating them with kid gloves and start treating them like the ultimate Hollywood joke, the game changed forever. This isn't just about a couple of jokes on a stage. It's about the complete and total dismantling of a brand that was once valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. As of 2026, the situation has moved beyond simple criticism into something much more permanent. They have become the industry's most reliable punchline. But how did we get here? How did a Duke and Duchess go from being the most sought-after couple in the world to being the people that Netflix bosses reportedly find annoying? To understand the fall, we have to look at the moments the mask finally slipped. The first real explosion happened in March 2023. And the irony couldn't have been thicker. Netflix, the same streaming giant that signed Harry and Meghan to a deal worth a staggering $100 million, dropped Chris Rock's live special Selective Outrage. The entire world was watching, expecting Rock to finally address the infamous Will Smith Oscars slap. But while he did get to that, he spent a massive calculated portion of his set surgically deconstructing the Sussex narrative. Rock didn't just tell jokes. He voiced the frustration of a global audience that felt they were being gaslit by two of the most privileged people on the planet. He took aim at the very core of Meghan's victimhood. Rock pointed out the glaring irony of a woman who, in his words, hit the light-skinned lottery and married a literal prince only to spend the next 4 years complaining about how hard her life was. The crowd didn't just laugh. They roared in a way that felt like a collective release of tension. Rock hit the nail on the head when he addressed the infamous Oprah interview, mocking Meghan's claim that she didn't know anything about the royal family before joining. "It's the royal family," Rock shouted. "You didn't Google those mother effers." It was the question everyone wanted to ask. The idea that a savvy 21st century actress with an internet connection didn't do a deep dive into the history of the world's most famous family was, as Rock put it, pure fiction. But Rock went even deeper, touching on the most sensitive part of the Sussex story, the accusations of racism within the palace. For 2 years, that claim had been their ultimate weapon, silencing critics who were afraid to speak up for fear of being labeled. Rock, however, dismantled it with ease. He argued that curiosity about a baby's appearance isn't automatically a hate crime. It's human nature. By reframing their bombshell as a common in-law annoyance, he stripped them of their status as victims of systemic oppression and turned them into people who were simply complaining. The impact was devastating because of the platform. Imagine being the Sussexes sitting in your Montecito mansion, realizing that the company you work for just paid a man millions of dollars to call you dumb and manipulative to a global audience of millions. That was the moment the protection ended. While Chris Rock was handling the Netflix side of the destruction, Jimmy Kimmel was sharpening his knives on late-night television. Kimmel had been watching the Sussex saga for years, but the release of Harry's memoir, Spare, gave him the ultimate ammunition. When Harry decided to share the deeply intimate and frankly bizarre story about using his late mother's lip cream on his frostbitten private parts, the world collectively recoiled. Kimmel didn't let him off the hook for a second. He created an entire parody children's book called The Prince and the Penis, a savage, relentless mockery of Harry's total lack of boundaries. Kimmel pointed out the staggering hypocrisy of a man who claims he wants privacy above all else, yet writes 400 pages about his most private physical issues and family squabbles. The laughter was no longer coming from haters or trolls. It was coming from the very heart of the American entertainment establishment. When Kimmel compared Harry's looks to the character Screech from Saved by the Bell, it wasn't just a low-B blow. It was a signal that the Prince title no longer commanded respect or awe in Hollywood. In the eyes of the industry, Harry had transformed from a royal icon into just another celebrity oversharing for a paycheck. This transition was crucial. Once you become a joke to the late-night hosts, you lose the ability to be taken seriously as a global leader or a humanitarian figure. Kimmel's mockery normalized the idea that Harry and Meghan weren't people to be pied, but characters to be laughed at. He even poked fun at their escape to America, noting the irony of moving to a country with its own deep racial history to escape racism. The logic didn't add up, and Kimmel made sure his audience saw the holes in the story. By the time he was done, the fairy tale image was buried under a mountain of punchlines. But the comedy, as brutal as it was just a symptom of a much deeper problem, the complete collapse of their business model. By early 2026, the Sussex brand hit a wall of cold, hard reality. They had signed massive deals based on their potential to be content creators. But as the years went on, the output was incredibly thin. Their Spotify deal was famously terminated, leading to Spotify executive Bill Simmons calling them effing grifters on his own podcast. That word grifters began to follow them everywhere. It suggested that they were people who promised the world but delivered very little living off their titles while contributing nothing of substance to the platforms that paid them. As of April 2026, the situation has become even more desperate. The $100 million Netflix deal, which was once their crown jewel, has officially come to an end. But the way it ended was perhaps the most embarrassing part. Reports have surfaced that Meghan has been desperately trying to woo Netflix bosses to secure a new contract, but her tactics are backfiring. Insiders claim she has been sending personal gifts, handwritten letters, and even jars of her own jam to CEO Ted Sarandos and his wife. One source described these efforts as annoying and too much, stating that the ploy simply isn't working. This jam diplomacy is a far cry from the global influence they expected to have. Instead of being invited to the White House or leading international summits, they are reportedly reduced to sending homemade preserves to executives in a desperate attempt to stay relevant. It shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how Hollywood works. In this industry, you are only as good as your last hit. And the Sussexes haven't had a hit since their initial documentary. They are fighting for a seat at a table that has already been cleared. Nowhere is the Sussex struggle more apparent than in Meghan's attempt to launch a lifestyle brand. Originally announced as American Riviera Orchard, the brand was supposed to be her big Martha Stewart moment. But the rollout has been a masterclass in how not to launch a business. In 2025, the brand underwent a sudden and confusing name change to As Ever. Why? Because of a mountain of trademark issues and notices of irregularity. By March 2026, the brand faced its biggest blow yet. Netflix, which was originally supposed to be a partner in the venture, officially announced they were stepping back. A statement was released saying that Meghan would continue growing the brand independently. In the world of corporate PR, that is a polite way of saying, you're on your own. Netflix saw the writing on the wall. The brand lacked a clear vision, and more importantly, it lacked products. Aside from a few jars of jam sent to celebrities, there was no actual business for consumers to engage with. To make matters worse, 2026 brought rumors of legal friction in Europe. Speculation surfaced that the new As Ever logo, a palm tree design, bore a surreal resemblance to the coat of arms of a small town in Spain. While the Duchess's team dismissed the claims, the plagiarism headline stuck. It added to the narrative that everything they do is either unoriginal or a poorly executed copy of something else. By the time April 2026 rolled around, the brand that was supposed to make them billionaires was mostly known for its delays and its annoying marketing tactics. As the business empire crumbled, the internal culture of the Sussex household began to leak out again. In late 2025 and early 2026, a new wave of staffing crises hit the Montecito mansion. A series of high-profile resignations, including their deputy press secretary and Meghan's social media manager, reignited the Duchess' difficult label that has haunted her since her days in London. Reports from The Hollywood Reporter and other major outlets described Meghan as a dictator in high heels who allegedly marches around giving orders and belittling those who don't meet her standards. One insider claimed that she doesn't take advice and that the couple is now worried about what these disgruntled former employees might say once their non-disclosure agreements are tested. The couple's representative tried to play down the drama, calling it a transition to agency support staff, But the pattern is impossible to ignore. Since moving to the US, they have gone through dozens of employees. This revolving door at Arkewell suggests that the problem isn't the staff, it's the leadership. It's hard to maintain a brand based on compassion and kindness when your own employees are allegedly calling you a dictator. This disconnect between their public persona and their private behavior is exactly what the comedians like Chris Rock were mocking. And in 2026, the evidence is only mounting. Despite the internal reports of her difficult nature, Meghan has continued to lean into her role as the ultimate victim. In April 2026, during a high-profile tour of Australia, she stood in front of a group of students and made a staggering claim. She told the audience that she had been the most bullied person in the entire world for the last decade. The backlash was instantaneous. Critics pointed out that while online trolling is a real issue, calling herself the most bullied person in the world felt like a slap in the face to actual victims of war, poverty, and systemic abuse. It was Chris Rock's paper cuts analogy brought to life. People began to ask, how can someone who lives in a $14 million mansion, travels with private security, and has a global platform claim to be the world's biggest victim? The irony was further heightened by the fact that she made these comments while her own former staff members were reportedly seeking legal advice regarding their treatment in her household. The public isn't buying the Victim Act anymore. A 2026 poll in Australia found that 69% of respondents believed the Sussexes had not been treated unfairly by the royal family. They aren't seen as exiles anymore. They are seen as people who are perpetually unhappy despite having everything. While Meghan fights the branding wars, Prince Harry seems to be fighting a battle for his own identity. By 2026, the California dream has started to look more like a gilded cage. Harry has spent the last year in a grueling legal battle with the UK Home Office over his security arrangements. In May 2025, he lost a major appeal. And as of March 2026, he is still fighting for taxpayer-funded protection in the UK. This legal defeat is more than just about security. It's about his status. Without the official protection of the state, he is just another private citizen. This has reportedly caused a massive rift in his personal life as he feels he cannot bring his children Archie and Liet back to his homeland. But the British public's sympathy is at an all-time low. Most feel that if he wants the perks of being a royal, he shouldn't have trashed the institution for a paycheck. Even more damaging are the reports from 2026 regarding his relationship with his family. A new biography by Tom Bauer claims that Queen Camilla allegedly remarked that Harry had been brainwashed by his wife, a claim his spokesperson called a deranged conspiracy. But whether it's true or not, the fact that these stories are dominating the headlines shows how far the rift has gone. Harry is a man without a country and increasingly a man without a purpose. He is no longer the war hero or the fun prince. He is the man who wrote about his penis in a book and is now suing his own government. The most telling sign of the Sussexes' fall isn't found in the tabloids, but in the guest lists of Hollywood's A-list events. In the early days of their move to California, they were associated with the Obamas, the Clooneys, and Oprah. But by 2026, that circle has noticeably tightened, and the Sussexes aren't inside it. High-level insiders suggest that Hollywood's elite have distanced themselves for a very simple reason. They don't want to be featured in the next memoir. The Sussexes have shown a willingness to tell all, and in a town that runs on secrets and discretion, that is the ultimate sin. When you trade your family's private conversations for a Netflix deal, you prove that you can't be trusted. Say a result, they are increasingly isolated. They aren't seen at the Oscars, they aren't at the Met Gala, they aren't even at the high-profile birthday parties of their Montecito neighbors. They have become radioactive in a way that is hard to recover from. People are afraid that if they invite Harry and Meghan over for dinner, the details of the conversation will end up in a podcast or a tell-all interview. They wanted to be Hollywood royalty, but they forgot that Hollywood royalty is built on more than just a title. It's built on longevity and loyalty, two things they have struggled to maintain. But there's a much darker side to this comedy of errors, and it's something the glitzy Netflix documentaries didn't show you: the staggering cost of maintaining a royal lifestyle without a royal budget. As we move deeper into 2026, the financial walls are closing in. It's estimated that their private security detail alone costs upwards of $3 million a year. When you add in the mortgage on their $14 million estate, the high-end PR teams, and the legal fees from their never-ending courtroom battles in London, the math starts to look terrifying. They are stuck in a security trap of their own making. They claim they can't live without elite protection because of the danger their fame creates. But that very fame is currently their only way to pay for the guards. It's a cycle that would keep anyone up at night, and it's led to some truly desperate pivots. By mid-2026, rumors began to swirl in the industry that Meghan was considering the one thing she once swore she'd never do: returning to the world of low-tier influencer marketing. We're talking about wellness patches and luxury weight loss supplements. It's a far cry from the global humanitarian image they tried to sell us in 2020. The problem is that once you become a punchline for people like Chris Rock, the prestige brands, the Chanels, and the Diors of the world don't want to be anywhere near you. You become brand poison. And what happened next would prove that even their most loyal supporters were starting to look for the exit. This isolation isn't just financial, it's social. Reports from the exclusive enclaves of Montecito suggest that the Sussexes have become the neighbors from hell for the quiet Hollywood elite. While stars like Ellen DeGeneres or Oprah prefer to keep a low profile in their private lives, the Sussexes are seen as a permanent circus. Everywhere they go, the tension follows. In early 2026, a local boutique owner claimed that a simple shopping trip for Meghan required her team to request the entire store be cleared out for security reasons. The town is over it. The A-listers who once championed them have realized that being friends with the Sussex is a high-risk, low-reward game. So what is the lesson here? It's a story as old as time, but with a very modern digital twist. You can't play the victim forever, especially when your actions constantly contradict your words. You can't claim you want privacy while signing multi-million-dollar deals for documentaries about your private life. You can't accuse people of bullying while your own staff is fleeing in droves. Chris Rock and Jimmy Kimmel didn't destroy Harry and Meghan. They simply pointed out the truth that was already there. They held up a mirror to the contradictions, the hypocrisy, and the sheer absurdity of the Sussex brand. And when the world looked into that mirror, they didn't see a prince and a duchess. They saw two people who had traded their dignity for a chance at fame and lost both in the process. Meghan Markle entered the royal family as Hollywood royalty, and she left it as a cautionary tale. In 2026, as she sends her jars of jam to unimpressed executives and claims to be the most bullied person on earth. The tragedy is no longer the cold palace or the racist press. The tragedy is that she has become the very thing she feared most irrelevant. The comedy hour isn't just a moment in time, it's the new reality for the Sussexes. And as long as they continue to play the victim while cashing the checks, the world will continue to laugh because in the end, the only thing more shocking than the bombshell interviews is the fact that they thought we wouldn't see through them. The fairy tale is officially over.